Hey guys, John here from Fly8MikeAlpha.com online ground schools. It is so good to see all of your smiling faces, even though I can't really see any of your faces. Anyways, in our last video, we talked about all the arrival procedures, how to get into Lake Hood, this awesome little airport right here in the heart of Anchorage. Well, now that we taught you guys how to get in there, it seems like it would make a lot of sense if we went ahead and talked about all the departure procedures for leaving Lake Hood, and that is what we're going to do in this video. And at the end of the video, we'll even get the take on it from one of the air traffic controllers at Lake Hood Tower. Let's go intro. So we want to go ahead and get out of Lake Hood now. So whether we're taking off in an airplane from the water or we're taking off from the strip, it's basically the same departure procedure. So let's go ahead and look at the Alaska chart supplement. And let's start off with the easy ones, right? So we got the west route and the east route. So let's go ahead and talk about the west route here. Very similar for the arrival procedure, right? But we're just going to do the departing aircraft part of this now. So let's say we want to take off, and we're going to make it simple, right? We want to take off on wheels from runway 32 because the west route's in use. And when you listen to the ATIS and you hear that the west route is in use, that means they're using the west, north, or northwest water lanes and runway 32. So we're going to be using runway 32. There's no ground control at Lake Hood. We're going to taxi all the way over to the runway, get ourselves right to the hold short line, and then call up the tower. And what it's going to sound like is Lake Hood Tower, Cessna 12345, holding short runway 32. VFR northbound west route with whiskey. I think every pilot loves information whiskey. Anyways, back to what we were actually talking about. So if we are going to be taking off and going to the north or the northwest or maybe even northeast, somewhere out in this general area, well, and the west route's in use, it makes sense to go ahead and use the west route departure procedure rather than using something like the Tudor overpass that takes us way out here. So in this case, we've told ATC we want to go northbound and we want to use the west route. We've absolutely avoided any sort of confusion that could possibly exist. We used a few extra words in there, but we told them we're VFR northbound, we're going to be using the west route, and we got the information, and they're going to come back and say, Cessna 12345, Lake Hood Tower, clear for takeoff runway 32. Now, could you have called up and just said Lake Hood Tower, Cessna 12345, holding short runway 32, VFR northbound with whiskey? Yeah, you could have. You don't have to include the departure procedure you're using, but it sure helps them out to know exactly which departure procedure you're going to use. It helps reinforce the idea that, yes, you know what's going on, and you're going to comply with the departure procedure. You actually know what the procedures are around Lake Hood. It just helps avoid a lot of confusion. So in this case, they've cleared you for takeoff on runway 32, and now it's time for us to get rolling, right? So we're going to go ahead and take off, and we can see we're just going to follow these little dotted arrows across the kinetic arm, and we're going to do so right at 900 feet MSL. We're going to climb to 900 feet MSL as rapidly as practical in your little Cessna, as fast as that little 150 can get up there. You're going to cross over 900 feet. Now be very careful not to get blown towards the Surface Class Charlie. This is Surface Class Charlie airspace here, so make sure you don't get to the west of the boat hole. Fly right to the boat hole, but don't get too far east because that's where the inbound traffic's coming in at Point McKenzie, right? So look for the boat hole, or as people like to refer to it around here as the boat hole. Fly to the boat hole, fly directly over top of it, and get clear of that Class Charlie airspace, and then go ahead and turn on route whichever way you choose to go. Now, if you stay on this side of Powerline Bend, this is what they call Powerline Bend here when the power lines bend, well, that's a great reference marker on the ground to keep you clear of the Class Charlie airspace. You can see that Class Charlie comes out to here, get onto the northern side of the power lines, you'll be good. Again, use caution for the inbounds coming in. They're coming in at 1,200 feet, 1,200 feet MSL. You don't want to get nose to nose with one of those guys, so fly this nice tight little corridor you've got here. Now, there's also an option here if you're in a real high performance airplane, if you're flying that 185 today, well then you could go ahead and climb up to at or above 2,200 feet MSL, except maintain at or below 2,500 feet MSL until authorized by ATC, meaning you can take off of here and before you cross the kinetic arm, jump on up to 2,200 feet MSL, stay below 2,500 feet, and get across, and then you can change your altitude once advised by ATC. A little complicated, easier to do the 900-foot thing, especially in the underpowered, heavily loaded airplanes that we fly. Now, why do they do it that way? Well, if we look here, the airspace is designed for it. We can actually take off, and we're not in anyone's airspace out here except Lake Hood. This is the Lake Hood Class Delta airspace, this little triangle right here. So we fly through Lake Hood's airspace, we avoid Merrill's, we're avoiding Anchorage International, and we can climb up to 2,200 feet MSL, and we'll be 300 feet above the 1,900 foot MSL shelf out here. So we could be above the Class Charlie airspace as we fly out, but they don't want you above 2,500 feet MSL because they got all sorts of other stuff going on with airliners and military air traffic and all that coming in here. Now, why don't they want you between 900 and 2,200? Well, they got some other arrival procedures that go into Merrill and Elmendorf, and so it's really just to separate airplanes the best they possibly can. Now, it's really similar if the east route is in use. We can go ahead and take a look at the east route. So if you hear on the ATIS, east route is in use, well, in that case, it just kind of reverses a little bit, right? You could expect to take off a runway 14, and when you go ahead and call up ATC and you get cleared to take off runway 14, tower tells you Cessna 12345, Lake Hood Tower, clear for takeoff runway 14. Well, then you're going to go ahead and make that left turn, fly on past the ballpark, make sure you hit 900 feet before you cross the Connect Arm, bring your water wings. I hear the water is cold all times of the year. Fly across the 900 feet. Don't get into Merrill's airspace. This is Merrill's Class D right here, so make sure you stay just west of it. Don't get blowing too far to the west to where you're on the course of the inbounds coming from the boat hull to the airport. Fly your nice little corridor of airspace right at 900 feet. You've only got 300 feet of separation from the arriving aircraft that are flying from the boat hull on inbound. Now, what happens once you pass Point McKenzie here, right? So you pass Point McKenzie. Well, you're clear of everyone's airspace. You're underneath the Charlie. You're clear of the Delta airspace. If it's real congested on the radio, I'd suggest just swapping over to the advisory frequency, 22.9. If it's not too busy on the radio, you could go ahead and request the frequency change, and ATC will give you the frequency change and any other pertinent information they want to let you know before they let you go. But once you're outside of someone's airspace, you are not legally required to talk to them anymore. So once you are clear of Charlie and Delta airspace, well, then you can swap your radio over to whatever you want. The same option exists on this departure to go ahead and climb up like crazy up to 2,200 feet, but below 2,500 feet, and cross the Connect Arm up higher if you'd like to go ahead and glide a little further when that engine coughs and sputters on you. The east route and west route departure procedures are awesome to use when you're going to the northwest, when you're going north, when you're going to the northeast. Now, what about when we're going south or when we're going just straight west? What can we do there? Well, that's when the other departure procedures come into play, right? So the Tudor Overpass, you guys remember this from our arrivals video. The Tudor Overpass, just like the east and west route, has an arrival portion. It also has a departure portion, right? So if we're going to be taking off, let's say we're taking off runway 32. Tower goes ahead and clears us for takeoff runway 32. First, we called him up. We taxied all the way up to the whole short line. Never talked to ground because ground doesn't exist at Lake Hood. And we go ahead and say, hey, Lake Hood Tower, Cessna 12345, holding short runway 32, VFR southbound Tudor Overpass with whiskey. And they're going to say, ooh, whiskey, we like that too. They're also going to say, Cessna 12345, Lake Hood Tower, clear for takeoff, runway 32, right turn out approved. Now, why they said right turn approved is, if you notice here, it says depart the traffic pattern as assigned by ATC. If you take off runway 32, somehow or another, you need to get over to this nice little arrow dashed line over here, and you're going to do so, like ATC told you, with that right turn. Maybe they tell you left turn. It's up to them. They can tell you either one. But if they tell you right turn, you'll make that right turn on over, and you will fly just south of Tudor Road. You want to pass just south of the Tudor Overpass, the Tudor and New Seward Overpass, so you can see it just off your left shoulder, right underneath you, just off the left side of the airplane. And you want to be flying outbound at 900 feet MSL. You want to stay at 900 feet MSL all along here, 900 feet MSL or below, until you hit the corner of Tudor and Muldoon Road. When you hit the corner of Tudor and Muldoon Road, what it really looks like is this right here. That's the corner of Tudor and Muldoon. So you get on out there, and guess what? Congratulations, you're clear of everyone's airspace. You can go that way, you could go that way, you could go this way, and any which way you want. Of course, stay clear of all the Delta airspace and everything else out there, and be cautious that there are some inbound arrivals coming in there, like we did last time at 1,500 feet MSL, coming in to fly over. So don't get too gung-ho and climb right up to 1,500 feet MSL and fly outbound here to the south. You might want to fly a little lower or a little higher. Just be alert for inbounds coming in that way and inbounds coming in from the north as well. There is no altitude restriction on the guys coming in from the north except 1,500 feet MSL once they get linked up along the road here coming inbound. Just to help you visualize, this is the Class Delta airspace around Merrill. That's the black line right here. This is the little sliver of Class Charlie airspace, that little tiny bit you are able to pass through, remaining clear of the Class Charlie airspace. And so when you get out here past the corner, you're clear of everyone's airspace. Same rule applies. Ask for the frequency change if they're not busy. If they are busy, probably just swap over to advisory and get the heck on out of there, or whatever altitude in whatever direction you so choose. Next, if you're feeling adventurous and you want to go ahead and save just a few minutes off your flight, well, you could request the Chickaloon departure if you are in fact heading straight southbound, so you don't have to go ahead and fly out to the corner of Tudor and Muldoon Road. Instead, you could go ahead and request the Chickaloon departure. Now, the Chickaloon departure has you flying right over top the runways at International. So as you can expect, you're going to be doing a little bit more talking to Anchorage Tower and Anchorage departure because you're going to be flying in their airspace. If you do want to do the Chickaloon departure, look at this little note they have up here. You don't talk to ground when you're flying out of Lake Hood at all, but if you want to fly the Chickaloon departure, you're going to have to contact Anchorage Clearance Delivery and advise of the destination and the request the Chickaloon departure, right? So you're going to have to tell them, hey, I want to go to VFR southbound day, I want to go to Seldovia, I want to go to Homer, and request the Chickaloon departure with them. They're going to give you a squawk code because you're going to be flying through their airspace and they're going to want to know who you are and how high you are. When you call up Lake Hood Tower and you let them know you're holding short of runway 32 or 14 or you're ready to go on the water, wherever you're at, you're going to let them know where you are. You're going to let them know your direction of flight. You're going to let them know that you have the ATIS, and you're going to let them know you're doing the Chickaloon departure. They're going to go ahead and issue you a left or right turn out. If you're departing runway 32, expect left traffic, and departing runway 14, expect right traffic. The same thing applies to the water lanes, right? So if you're departing to the west or northwest or the east or southeast, those are the turns you're going to expect. Expect it, but again, comply with whatever ATC says. If they issue you something different, if they issue you a left turn when you think you're going to get a right turn, just verify it with them so you're both on the same page. They make mistakes too. Once you make the turn they assign you, you're going to go ahead and go direct to the east shore of Campbell Lake. Campbell Lake, though all those beautiful homes that none of us can afford, you're going to go to the east side of it, look at all those pretty seaplanes and pretty homes and say, oh, maybe one day. And as you pass by there saying, oh, maybe one day, you'll stay below 2,500 feet MSL until crossing the north shore of the Turnagain Arm or advised by ATC. Don't forget to set your DG before you take off because when you leave Campbell Lake, you need to be heading 160 to get to the North Shore. You can't just pick any point here on the North Shore. They want you to fly a heading of 160, maintaining at or below 2,500 feet until you cross the North Shore of the Turnagain Arm, and then ATC will let you know what they want you to do from there. The Chickaloon departure will save you a few minutes if you are going southbound, but it's only about 2 or 3 minutes over the Tudor Overpass departure. Again, because you're going right over top of Anchorage International's airspace, Ted Stevens airspace, they may not approve it, right? So when you call up Anchorage Clearance Delivery, they may say, no, not so much today. We're just too busy for you. Just do something else. Fly the Tudor Overpass, fly one of the other departure procedures. Now, we love to give you guys options when you're departing Lake Hood. So to give you one more option here, to confuse it just a little bit more, we have our last departure option out of here, the Little Sioux departure. And the Little Sioux may be issued to westbound aircraft. Contact Anchorage Clearance Delivery on 119.4 or 128.65 and request the Little Sioux departure before you call up Lake Hood Tower. Again, going to be cutting right through that Class Charlie airspace, that Service Class Charlie airspace. So Ted Stevens is going to want to know who you are. They're going to want to give you a squawk code before you do this departure. Notice here the route instructions, right? We're going to depart the traffic pattern as assigned by Lake Hood Tower. So they're going to tell us, oh, left turn, right turn, however the traffic's flowing that day. If we're taking off runway 14, it might be a right turn out. If we're taking off the west water lane, it might just be straight out, and we'll fly the Little Sioux departure. We're going to proceed direct to the mouth of the Little Susitna River, and we're going to maintain at or below 600 feet the whole time. You're going to cross right over midfield of runway 33 at Anchorage International. Right over the middle of the runway is what you're aiming for here, and then direct to the mouth of the Little Sioux. Keep in mind, this is all water, and it's real cold, so if you're flying a float plane, great idea, give this a shot. If you're not, well, personally, I like to minimize the amount of time I'm over water in an airplane that sinks rapidly, so I typically fly the east or the west route when I'm on wheels. The same rule applies to the Little Sioux departure as with the Chickaloon departure, right? You're going to go ahead and contact Clearance Delivery, but you're also going to want to let Lake Hood Tower know that you're doing the Little Sioux departure on your initial call-up. Say you're departing runway 32. I know we've said it before, but just to clarify it, hey, Lake Hood Tower, Cessna 12345, holding short runway 32, VFR westbound, Little Sioux departure, with whiskey. Those few extra words you throw in there just eliminate all confusion. Now, before we go ahead and talk to an air traffic controller at Lake Hood and get his take on all this, there's one thing I want to share with you, right? Pilot deviations, when guys get in trouble, PDs. When do they hand out PDs at Lake Hood and Anchorage International? Well, I can tell you last year, there were 11 PDs, 11 pilot deviations between International and Lake Hood. That's not a lot. Consider the number of airliners coming in and out of here and the number of all those little airplanes flying in and out of here. A lot of times you get yelled at on the radio and that's the end of it. So when did they issue those 11 PDs? What did somebody do that was so egregious that actually got them in trouble for it and the FAA ended up calling the guy? Well, it was when people just flat out had no clue what they were doing. They either didn't talk on the radio, weren't clear on the radio with what their intentions were, there was a ton of confusion between them and ATC, and then they did something blatantly wrong and did not comply with the departure or arrival procedures. Basically, to get a pilot deviation around Lake Hood as a general aviation pilot, you're going to have to totally lose situational awareness of where you are at, or you're going to have to just be totally ignorant of all these procedures and not have copies of them in the airplane with you and not have a clue of what altitude and where you're supposed to be. If you can avoid those two things, if you can take your time and maintain your situational awareness of where you are on the airfield, and you know what these departure procedures are and you can comply with them, maybe you have copies of them printed out in your airplane so you can reference them if you need to, well, then you should be just fine. And even if you do make a little mistake, talk to ATC about it on the radio. You'll be able to solve it together. And guess what? They really don't care that much. Don't hesitate to use the words unfamiliar. When you initially call them up, if you are unfamiliar with the airspace, tell them that, say you are unfamiliar, and they will keep a closer eye on you, and you're a lot less likely to get into trouble that way. As long as you're making an effort and you're working with them, they'll work with you. Now let's go ahead and chat with our air traffic control friend. So coming to you live from the Knik Picnic Strip, right next to the Knik Glacier, we are here with Clint, and he is the expert on Lake Hood.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Well, he works in the tower there, so he is more of an expert than myself or anyone else I know. So tell me, from your very professional standpoint here, what do you want to hear when I get handed off from either Ted Stevens Tower or handed off right from approach, say I'm doing the Tudor overpass? What do you want to hear as a tower controller, me call up to you when I get that handoff?
Coming into Lake Hood, we want to hear your call sign, and where you're at,
Okay.
and what surface you're landing on,
Okay.
and that you have the ATIS.
Okay, so it could be something like Lake Hood Tower, Cessna 2962 Delta, Tudor overpass, or 2 miles east of the Tudor overpass, landing at the strip with Kilo.
Perfect.
Okay, so that's what we want to hear coming in. Now, how about when we're going out of there, because there is no ground control in Lake Hood.
No ground control. All the taxiways around Lake Hood are uncontrolled.
So basically, I just taxi right up to the runway. I click the little gate open for myself, let myself out towards the runway, and then call up tower. And do I tell you what departure I want? Do I just tell you direction of flight?
Yep, call up with your call sign. You're holding short at which runway? You're holding short of 14 or 32.
Okay.
Tudor overpass.
Okay.
You've got the ATIS. We always want to hear that ATIS. Make sure you got
Cool.
it.
Okay, awesome. Now, how about if I just want to say I'm departing north? Now, is that okay, or do I need to say Mackenzie departure?
Nope, north is fine.
Okay. Now, do I have to fly the Mackenzie departure?
Fly the route. So there's an east route or a west route.
Gotcha.
So west route is 32 or the west water lane.
Okay.
And then you take off on 32 and you're headed up to the boat.
Okay.
Boat hole to the north.
The boat hole or boat hull?
Boat hole.
Boat hull.
Hole. H-U-L-L.
Boat hull. Cool. So basically tell you the direction of flight. So either direction of flight or the departure we want to fly, but most importantly, comply with the departures.
Comply with the departures. Yep.
Cool.
And let us know which way you're headed.
Awesome.
And
Perfect.
you got the ATIS. That's the
And
big
that we got the ATIS.
And you got the ATIS.
Gotta let them know you got the ATIS.
I have a good one. What do you want to hear if we are at Bar Lake or we're 20 miles south and we're talking to approach? I know it's not Lake Hood Tower.
So yeah, talking to approach, same thing. Just let them know where you're at, where you're inbound for, altitude, and that you got the ATIS over your destination airport.
So we're going to be saying the ATIS a whole lot when we go into Lake Hood, basically, is what I'm gathering here. Tell approach you got the ATIS. Tell Lake Hood Tower you got the ATIS. Ted Stevens Tower, maybe they don't care so much, but because usually you're only talking to them for a few seconds there. But yeah, let them know you got the ATIS. And come out here to the Knik Picnic Strip if you ever get to Alaska. Well, thank you to Clint for being our expert at Lake Hood. Appreciate it.
No problem.
And yeah, let them know you got the ATIS.
ATIS.